That? Let's go to here first. We'll just do a quick overview. All right, remember we said, show me the way I got the way I am, the rut. So let's do a little memory thing. Show me the way I got the way I am. The first thing is there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then the rut. All right, the good had to do with the fact that God created us in an incredibly unique way. The bad was that we were born with a spirit, soul, and a body. But the problem is we were born with a drunk driver who was completely out of control. Satan got a bunch of people together and whispered a bunch of trash to us. We had a lot of hurts in life. And, we don't trust God. So we accept all this information. And then we have needs. We talked about having needs. And in having needs, the biggest need we have is for love and acceptance. We're driven to get love and acceptance just like a hunger. We got to have that. And so an insane, out of control condition, needing love and acceptance, we ran to other insane, out of control people and told them, would you please tell me who I am? They told me I was trash. And then we just went through parents, friends, girls, sex, whatever it was, all the way around like that, okay? So that was go. Our bad, our good, bad. The ugly was, we're going to look at the ugly right now, all right? We asked them to give us an impression they'd like to leave on somebody at a party. We asked them to tell us what they're like at their worst moment, and this is what we said. And we said this little desired impression you'd like to leave at people on a particular moment at any given time. Your desired impression is like a success suit. We used an example, gave them some examples of how that would work out, but we said there are events that happen that undress you to reveal that you're this and not this. That you're what you feel about yourself at your worst or what you're like at your worst. I didn't talk a whole lot about it, but if you've got a kid that grew up in a church, they're liable to tell you what I am at my worst is not really me. Because they don't ever let anybody see that. You remember when Mike did my history the other day? He talked about how I had a dual personality. Well, I'm the poster child for good little church kids that have two things that they feel and believe about themselves and their behaviors. Everybody with me on that? So the event happens. It goes through a filter from the enemy. I'm convinced I'm this and not this. I get angry, and I find some way to get rid of the pain and get some pleasure. I got to impress upon you. It is absolutely imperative with students that you get them to connect the things that are in this circle have to do with getting rid of the pain, have to do with getting rid of the pain and getting some pleasure. Can you see why that would be important to them? Because they've got to connect that their actual behaviors and the more self-righteous behavior they have or socially acceptable behavior they have, the harder they're going to be able to see that. And you remember how we did that? We just went through, took the particular behavior and said, does that get rid of the pain, get some pleasure? Everybody with me so far? I'm not supposed to be an overview, so I know I'm buzzing through this pretty quickly. Matt had asked, and I am going to do this sometime today, if I could write at the end of each one of these sections, we've kind of done a summary, sort of a statement summary. We're going to make sure you've got that, okay? It may take me a couple days to get it, but I promise you I'll get it down for you. All right, and then, so an event reveals this rather than this. I get angry. Just another point that I didn't make a huge point on. I'm sorry, I know it's supposed to be a summary, but there's, the information just keeps spewing out. Every once in a while it just comes from nowhere. One of the things that sometimes it's difficult to get a student to see is they want to say, Mike, like a lot of adults too, but right now we're talking about students, they want to say that they're angry because of what happened in here. Well, I'll buy that. I mean, it certainly was the catalyst. An example I'll use with a student, if I've got one balking with me about what I'm really angry about, is I'll tell them about the time I blew up the science lab in high school. I know that's going to be a real surprise to you that happened, but I was in science, and the teacher said the first day of class, science is about discovery, trial and error. Well, I didn't hear anything else after that. I'm sure he had some other things that he communicated. And so it's the first day in science class, and he started us right off talking about the catalyst, a catalyst for a situation. And he had us put different things in different deals. Well, I thought, what happens if you put this thing over here and there. Nothing happened. This thing over here. Well, the one thing I happened to put, and I don't even know what it was, but I mean, we literally, like, they cleared the whole school. The lab caught on fire. It was quite an event. But the point is, there was a catalyst that started the thing. I can appreciate that this event in their life, which might be a mom or a dad, it might be somebody that's withdrawn from them, it may be a circumstance in life, may be a catalyst for their anger, but that's not what they're really angry about. And you really need to get that point across, because if not, they're going to spend their whole life blaming everybody else or the circumstances of their life on why they're angry about life. You get that? So an event happens, it reminds you that you're this and not this. You get angry, you find some way to survive or cope. If you want to tell them it's an idol, that's fine. But then the very thing I do to feel better, or at least to get rid of the pain and get some pleasure, now later on I feel bad about if I got any kind of conscience at all, and all it does is feed this circle again and prove that I'm this right here. All right, everybody okay on this? If you're not, I really want you to say, no, I'm not okay. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to be honest. I know you thinkers probably won't be honest, or you feelers, because you're going to be worried you hurt my feelings. Is this kind of reputation? Yeah, you can tell where I'm going this morning, can't you? Is this kind of repetition bad for you, or does this help for clarification?
Every time.
Okay. All right. I'm going to give you one more example on this, and then we're going to go on to the next one for a wrap. True story. I walk in the door. My wife's got a new rug, my wife then, a new rug that had ducks on it. I step onto the rug, and where I came from in the south, rugs at the back door were to wipe your feet on. Rugs at the front door, just inside the door, to wipe your feet on so you don't get mud all over the house. I step in the house on her brand new ducky rug. I wipe my feet, and it had been raining, so there's mud now on the deal. She comes flying around the corner, and for about 5 minutes starts yelling and screaming about how insensitive I am, I'm so stupid, and on and on and on about that I got mud on her ducky rug. And of course, my first thought was, I thought that's what rugs were for. I'm thinking to myself. But then, with the wisdom of Job, I might add, of Solomon, ooh, boy, I didn't get you. With the wisdom of Solomon, I looked up at her, I took my shoes off, and I looked down one side of the house, and you could see a couple of rooms, and I looked down the other side of the house, and I said, I don't know why you're worried about a stupid rug when the whole house is a pigsty. Okay, yeah, Alan's going, oh, you're trash, aren't you, man?
He learned from that.
Yeah, I learned that. All right, now, and so here's how it went. The event was, if I were filling this out, the event was, she told me I shouldn't stand on the rug. Now, I'm telling you, what I heard that day when she said that was, you're stupid and you don't love me. Okay? I got angry. And in my list of stuff that I want people to think about me, I want them to think I'm really smart and I'm the most sensitive guy on the planet. So you can get that? So that would have been in this circle that I'm stupid and I'm a failure as a husband. I got angry and I had to find some way to get rid of the pain and get some pleasure. So the first thing I did was to say the house is a pigsty. Now, that was an attempt to get rid of the pain and get some pleasure. For a brief moment, it made perfect sense to say it. And for a brief moment, it shut her up. So the pain was gone, and I was starting to feel pretty good about myself. Okay? Because I had brought this person under control. But then, what happened was, so that was that part of it. Then she came back, and she really lit into me. And she started making lists of all the things that I did wrong in the marriage. All right? Now, I listened. And of course I'm feeling like a failure. I got angry, and then the first time I just told her about the thing being a pigsty. This time what I said was, I went into debate mode to convince her how ungodly she was being. Of course, I did it with a condescending, arrogant attitude.
And scripture?
Huh? Well, I didn't actually quote book, chapter, and verse, but I certainly was communicating in a way that she would understand what the truth was. You know what I'm saying? So I went into debate mode. Now, where did I learn how to debate like that? Seminary. So, good seminary training to get you a long way. Okay. So she tells me, starts making a list. I feel like a failure as a husband again. I get angry. I got to get rid of the pain and get some pleasure. So I went into the one thing that I'm really great at. And in 5 minutes, I just completely backed her into a corner, sort of verbally. And then she came out and started attacking that, well, you're a fine example for your children. And then she started telling me how I was missing it with my children. Well, that was pretty valuable. I have 3 kids at that time, and and now I'm a bad dad. And I got angry, and on this one, all the spirituality went out the window. I went out the door, slammed the door, and got into my new Toyota Supra, which is basically the sports car at that time that everybody wanted. I went out on the lake, and I drove 148 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. Now, it's working. I'm not having to listen to her again. I have an incredible rush of pleasure. And, I didn't care if she didn't care anything about me because I was the man when I was in that car. And at 148 miles an hour, I suddenly realized I didn't know how to drive 148 miles an hour. And I locked it up, and I spun around and somehow did not go off the road. But by the time I got through spinning, I'd wet my pants. Really? I mean, it was crazy. And guess what? Now the very thing I'd done to get rid of the pain and to get some pleasure, now I thought, boy, you're in good shape. You're such a wreck, you can't even hold your water. You're so stupid to be driving that fast. You could have killed all kinds of people. And I just started hammering at myself and hammering. I just want you to see how this works. Now, this is key. It's imperative with your students that you demonstrate to them how that happens to you when you're undone. I don't care if you didn't drive 148 miles an hour. It's just important to get the point. Okay? Everybody okay on that? And what I usually do is I'll drive, just for my purposes, because I'm a very visual person, I'll just say there's a little filter in here that Satan himself sort of messes up the messages. Sometimes I'll just tell you, a student will say, well, I didn't think that. I'll say, listen, I didn't say you thought that exactly. Just go work with me here. If you didn't think that, how did you feel? Because all I know is you ended up getting mad. So my theory is you get mad because you're thinking that. Her point was just basically this, that although Satan is the one churning the pot, if I may put it that way, that we need to recognize that our flesh is cooperating in a very big way with all this. And then we need to not put on Satan those things which are our choices that are out of the flesh. Now again, to the student, what we just want to point to them is some of your self-righteous students will say, well, Satan did it, man. It was Satan's fault. He was, and they're going to put the whole load on Satan. No, that's not where we're going. They got to own what they're doing. This is their flesh. They're cooperating. Think about it. If you haven't heard, alcoholism is a progressive disease, meaning if you do it at 1, 2, 3, and you stop for a year, and let's say if you'd have kept on drinking, you'd have been at 4, 5, 6. You don't start here, here, or here. You start back here. Well, the same thing about the flesh. The flesh is a progressive, but it's not a disease. All right? Enough of that? All right, one last thing here. All right, everybody all right on that? I know we're taking some time to do some review here, but just want to make sure that you're as clear as possible with this. Now, show me the way that I can stop this madness. Something's got to go. And I'm just going to give you the big highlight steps. I'm not going to go into the great detail, okay? Number 1, the unholy Trinity attacks. And I'm not going on all of the details here. I'm just telling you. The unholy Trinity attacks. We described what the unholy Trinity was and all that. And if you want to say, now, excuse me, And here we are. We got Adam's life in us. And Adam's life, and we talked about all that Adam's life was. Adam was weak. He was a blamer. He was a no-hoper. He couldn't make good decisions. And so on. Everybody with me there? And so the unholy trinity goes into my mind. And one thing we want to point out is that this is Adam's life, and Adam's life always cooperates. What do we call our Adam's life for a student? Drunk driver. So the unholy trinity attacks us. And he whispers to us all kinds of messages about ourselves. So number one is the unholy trinity attacks. Number two, our drunk guy can't control these messages and these events that are coming into us. Excuse me. So the unholy trinity suggests to me, number three, just put it down, the unholy trinity suggests a reaction to this thing that's going on in me. And of course, it doesn't go well, so my plan is to change. Again, I'm doing this very quickly. And the very thing I do to change fails for me, and it just ends up proving that Adam's life is really whose Adam's life was. That's a quick overview. I understand that we went into great detail this other day. Number 7 is this. God never intended that we change something on the outside so I can feel better on the inside. His plan was to exchange this drunk guy for a sober guy. And this sober guy's name is Christ Jesus. And so that would be number 7. I'm just trying to give you a way to track through these two diagrams is all I'm after. Number 6 is that it proves when I fail, and then it proves what Adam has always felt about himself is really the truth. Adam's life loves disobedience. He's drunk. He can't figure out thoughts and emotions. So now I'm going to say overview. I gave you 6 little points to kind of work through this. I want you to hear this as an overview for this part. Here's what you want to get across. There's a drunk guy driving my car, and when the stuff of life happens, he can't distinguish between the lie and the truth. Like when I was a kid, growing up, when all those kids told me that I was just this fat little country hick that was too stupid to do anything. Adam's life in me had no ability to decipher that out. He had no ability to reject all that. And probably with a student, at this point, you just need to give them some examples that they can kind of hang on to. For instance, if you know from their history that Dad has spent every day of his life ignoring them, you know that gave them a message. Because by this time, you've already taken some information to them. And this is one you say, you know how you told me that you just can't stand your dad because he's never had anything to do with you? Well, you need to understand you had a little drunk guy driving your car. And a sober guy, it's supposed to drive your mind, will, and emotions. A sober guy could have done something about it. Your little drunk guy just took that piece of information in and believed it. Just another little thing. If anybody, you guys have a question or thinking? I haven't got to 8 yet. 7? 7. Yeah, I haven't got to 8 yet. I'm going there. I just want to make sure. You understand? The reason I'm stopping is I want you to understand this is a hard concept for a student to get a hold of. And you need to illustrate. You can get this part right. And I'll do a summary for you. But all we've done is sort of redesigned and resaid what we just said here. That's all we've done. So if it's better for you to think like this rather than like this, that's fine. But what we want to do is give them examples of how it would impact if I experience things in life and I've got somebody that doesn't have the ability to speak sense to me. One of the things that I illustrate is when my dad, when I would come in after getting beat up, my father would sit me on his knee. Mom would bring a wash rag and they'd wash all the dirt and blood off of me after I'd get beat up. He'd sit me on his knee. He'd take my chin and go just like this. Excuse me, Neville. Take my chin, make me look him right in the eye, just like that, and he says, I want to tell you something. First of all, I love you. But secondly, I want you to understand that what those boys were telling you about yourself and all the accusations they were throwing at you are not the truth. I want you to know I'm really proud of you, and you're going to do well as you go through life. Well, do you think that would impact a little boy that was in 4th grade? Third grade? 2nd grade? No, I'm sure it would. Well, what I say to them, what my earthly father did to me, my dad, God has the ability to do to me, but if I've got a drunk driver drive my car, or if I had a parent that didn't give a rip, because it may be the student you're talking with has a dad that if that had happened to them, they'd say, why didn't you whip their butts? Right? Rather than helping them get past all that stuff, he would have gotten a message that he's just weak, right? That's not a smart thing to have happening. But what we want to illustrate to them is as many examples as possible why having this drunk driver in their life, why they would even receive that information. And here's why it's important that you get this across. There's a lot of people that think they're bad because they shouldn't have accepted the messages. And what we want to get across is they're going to be toast for the rest of their life if they don't do something about this drunk guy driving their car, if they haven't already. And of course, if they have already and they just don't recognize it and we got to reveal it to them, then fine, that's a whole other approach. But you see what I'm saying? So use real life examples when you're working with students and use more than one. That's why I'm taking so much time to review this when I should be going on to something else. Everybody got that? If you're not tracking with me, you need to say now, because this is crucial in working with students. All right. So getting on, number 7 then is God, His plan was never that you change on the outside to feel better on the inside, but God agrees with you that this guy needs to die. He is worthless. He is a no-hoper, and he needs to exchange the inside on him, this drunk driver, for a sober driver named Jesus. And again, I'm assuming, I know I'm going real sketchy this morning on this. I want you to understand that the unholy Trinity still attacks, but now Christ's life goes up into your mind, will, and emotions, and He can tell you what a lie is. He can suggest a right behavior or something that's healthy for you. He can actually give you the power to say no and to follow through. That was number 8. So 7, I've exchanged this old worthless guy that's a drunk for a guy that's alive. 8, Christ's life flies out. The unholy Trinity attacks, but Christ helps me determine what's the lie, gives me the ability to determine what's right, and to do it and follow through with it. And I end up doing the perfect, number 9, perfect will of God. Does that make sense? You don't have to break it down in those steps. I was just trying to help you know where you go on this thing, how it flows. So overall, as we look at this diagram, the thing we're trying to illustrate is, there's always an unholy Trinity, and he's always attacking. I've got a drunk driver over here and a sober driver over here. When the unholy Trinity attacks the drunk driver, he can't do anything about it. When he attacks the sober driver, which is Jesus, he has the ability to speak the truth to them when everybody else around them is speaking lies to them, whether it's something that's actually happened or just something that's coming out of their brain. And again, I understand that we went into great detail about this, and there's no way I would go this quick like we just went with students. I'm just trying to refresh your memory. Everybody all right with that? All right, that's good. All right, here we go. Now, if you have a student, we're going to start to show me the way I can stop this badness. Not only does something have to go, I have to get Christ's life within. Excuse me. May I back up just one time? Yesterday, I blew through them so quickly, I just wanted to make sure that you remembered or understood the scriptures that were connected with this. Obviously, Galatians chapter 20, verse 2. Colossians... What did I say? Yeah, that's what I said. Colossians 3:5, Christ is my life. One of the things that I like to point out on this one, especially if you got a kid asking a bunch of questions about Scripture, I usually speak the truth to it. But if you got somebody that's very, very specific about Scripture, Romans 1 and 2, and I'll show you how that connects in just a second. But Philippians chapter 2, verses 12 and 13. For it is Christ, or God, who is at work in me. This is Christ's life. Both to will and to work. Philippians 2, 12 and 13. No. Philippians 2, 12 and 13. I'm going to tell you about Romans in just a second. I just wanted to... Philippians 2, 12 and 13. Now again, in my mind, where Romans 12, 1 and 2, after it talks about Christ's life being in us and no longer conforming to the pattern of the world, he says we'll be transformed by the renewing of our mind, and one will end up doing the perfect will of God. We're going to talk more about that. There's other passages. Anything that talks about him being a new creation, a new creature. Yeah. All right, everybody okay there? Now we're going to quit going like the wind, and we're going to slow down. How much time do I have? 15 minutes, okay. All right, now, so from the time before, if you met with a student and this is what you covered with them, their head is probably swimming even from the last time, okay? And this is what you want to tell them. Go back, it's good to review with the student. But then you're going to say, now listen, that looks like a jumbled mess from last week, doesn't it? Well, I'll tell you what I'd like to do is talk to you about why it makes such a radical difference for this sober driver, Jesus Christ, to be inside you. All right. Say, now listen, last week I talked about that whole, I told you it was going to be kind of weird. And I tell students, coming up to that diagram, I'll just say, look, next time is going to be a little weird. You're going to think you've gone into na-na land, and I just want you to hang with me, because God's going to show you, okay? He really has an opportunity to do that as we move through this. But this week, what I want to talk to you about is what practical difference it makes for Jesus to be inside you. How does that actually sort out? Again, what I said was, this week we're going to show you what practical difference it makes that Christ is inside you. Now we're going to slow down. All right, now the bad news is there's still an unholy trinity. And the unholy trinity, I'll just remind you, is all the past failure you've had. It's events and people that Satan can orchestrate. And as a matter of fact, Satan is called the deceiver. So he's out to lie to you. And again, I'll just remember from last week I told you, John 10:10, there's one who comes to steal, kill, and destroy, and that's Satan. Except now you have Christ's life in you. And Christ's life is very powerful. Christ's life can help you understand what the truth is. And you remember last week I told you that when Christ's life comes in, that he creates you and you're a whole nother being. What used to be true about you is no longer true about you. Well, that's all true, but I want to show you how you deal with the unholy trinity now. Now here's an interesting thing. The unholy trinity, at one point, Jesus had a body. Well, he still has a body, but when Jesus was on the earth, he had a body, and he had a soul, a mind, will, and emotions, and he had the Spirit of Christ in him. And we're told when he was on this earth, he was tempted in every way, but he didn't sin. So you see, the unholy trinity is not going to try to tempt your spirit. Remember before how I told you that Adam's life just loved doing disobedience and didn't have any control and all that? Well, Christ doesn't love disobedience, and he has a lot of ability to control what he does in life. And so what he does is Satan and the events and people, and with the knowledge of your past failure, goes to your mind, and his whole goal is to do this right here, to deceive you. Can you see it better now? That's his goal, is to deceive you. And so what he does is he goes up into your mind, and we're going to make a little building here. And I just want you to think of your mind, your soul, as your mind, will, and emotions, but you just think of it like it's a little hotel in your mind. Now, the first thing I'm going to describe to you is how you can have Christ's life inside you, but still do all the wrong stuff. Satan goes to your mind, and he's going to do several things. First of all, he's going to tell you a lie about yourself or about a situation. Another thing he's liable to do is to remind you of your old identity, of what you used to be true about you. Of course, we've spent some time the week before telling them that the old them's not alive anymore if they've chosen Christ. He's going to stir up old memories. I'm trying to be a little neater this time. As a matter of fact, he's even going to suggest some old ways that you used to cope. Now, Christ is inside you. But here's the thing. I just want you to imagine that there's a door in between Christ's life and your mind, will, and emotions. And as long as that door is shut, there's a limit at that particular moment about what this little driver can do for you, this sober driver named Jesus. Everybody with me so far? Okay. And so the unholy Trinity comes along, and he brings people and circumstances, and he does have some power. Satan has limited power, but he has some power. And his whole goal is to tell you lies about yourself and to snooker you into doing stuff that'll basically end up in a problem, to steal, kill, and destroy your life. And the door is shut off to this live driver, Jesus, that has the ability to deal with those thoughts and those emotions. And so what it happens is, he suggests a way to cope, and you end up doing the wrong thing. Everybody with me so far? But there's an interesting passage in the Bible in Romans chapter 12, 1 and 2. And of course, the first verse says, present yourself as a living sacrifice. But then he says this, brothers, don't be conformed any longer to the pattern of the world. You remember we talked about a pattern before? Remember we were talking about that? And those go, oh, yeah. What do you mean pattern? Well, you remember we talked about this right here? How you got caught in a pattern, in a rut? Well, it's the same thing, except here's what happens. He says, therefore do not be caught in the pattern of the world, or don't conform to it, but be transformed. How? By the renewing of your mind. Now, a couple of points I want to make here. If you'll look in Psalms 51, just as a note, and I might even say this to them, in Psalms 51, so right up here, renew the mind. He says, don't be conformed any longer to the rut of the world, because we already talked about it as a rut. But he said, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and then you will test out and be stamped approved, I'm paraphrasing here, in the perfect will of God. Well, that's where I want to end up. I want to end up choosing what's right. So here's what happens. With this door closed, even though I've got Christ's life in me, the unholy Trinity goes to my mind. He suggests a lie. He suggests an old ID. He stirs up old memories. And he even suggests a way for me to respond or cope, to get rid of the pain and get some pleasure. And I end up doing something wrong. And all the memory of that's in the hotel in my mind. But here's what the Word of God says. That if my mind could somehow get renewed, that I would test out and be stamped approved in the perfect will of God. What I usually tell them is, the word there for test out is the way they do gold. And it sifts it out, it gets all the impurities out, and all is left is the best. So you can end up as the best. The idea of being stamped approved is like USDA choice. It's when you approve a meat. It's gone through all the testing, and it's found out that it's right on. That's what this passage talks about. So let me just show you how that passage gets fleshed out in everyday life for a person that's got a sober driver driving their car, Jesus Christ. Let's imagine that we swing this door open. And I'll tell you how to get the door open later, but for right now, here's what happens. When I swing open this door, the unholy Trinity still comes. And he won't come to Christ's Spirit, but he comes up into my mind. But now I've opened up the door, and here's what happens. Christ's life goes up inside, and he starts working in some very specific ways. One of the ways Christ's life works is that he tells me the truth. So, for instance, if I've got somebody telling me that I'm a no-hoper, that I'm just a bum, that I'm stupid, that I'm an idiot, Christ can actually speak to me and tell me, that can't be true about you, because what's true about me is true about you. And you know what? I'm going to tell you what the truth really is. There's another thing, that when Christ's life comes up into my mind, will, and emotion, he heals up what's gone wrong inside me. And every time I open up this door, he heals up. And so I'll say, you remember some of the hurts that you've had from this or that or whatever? Keep tying it back to their history. Do you know that when Christ's life goes up into your mind, he has a way of renewing it or making it new. He can heal it up. Here's another thing that Christ's life will do when he goes up into my mind. He can also give me direction. You know, when you're getting bombarded by all the people that are giving you all these crazy messages and everything goes wrong in your life, sometimes you need some direction. Matter of fact, a lot of times you need direction. So Christ's life has the ability to give you direction. Now, usually about right here, I'll stop and I'll say, now I don't want to weird you out, but this is not something you're doing. This is Jesus Christ. So you were designed to have a sober driver drive your mind, will, and emotions, to take control of them and do the right thing. He'll only do that by invitation, but as he begins to move up, he tells you the truth, he heals you up, he gives you direction, and here's another thing, he gives you the ability to do what's right. And you remember I told you had a little hotel in your mind? Just think of it like this, that God goes up there, just like when you're on vacation, you go out for breakfast, and he cleans out one of those rooms. Now let me ask you, if one of those rooms has got a bunch of hurts you experienced from your mom or your dad or another person, would you like for that to somehow get fixed? Oh yeah. Or what about that idiot that you've been having to work with forever? Would you like that? Do you like being controlled by that person? Do you like reacting to them all the time? Oh, no. Well, here's one of the things that Christ does. He can go up and he can heal up at that point. And he can give you direction to do the right thing when in your emotions, which, by the way, is another thing we want to put on here. Another thing Christ's life gives you is he can actually control your emotions. Now, I didn't say get rid of them. That's what you want to point out to them. Your emotions may do all kinds of things, but he gives you the ability to choose and do a right thing. Now, I'm going to stop for a second. Is everybody okay on this? Okay so far? And then that means now you're doing the right thing, or righteousness. Now, just so you know, and again, I like to go back and hammer this scripture, and then we'll go back and review this again after the break. I want to point out to them what's the difference. What's the difference between before and now? Well, before I had a drunk guy driving my car, and as soon as somebody told me something that wasn't true about myself, he goes, well, it must be true. Right? And if some guy comes over to bully me, you know, not literally physically, but in my mind I'm struggling with stuff, this guy, drunk guy, just believes whatever. And he doesn't have the ability to handle anything. But now I've got Christ's life, which is a sober spirit. He has the ability to speak the truth to me when everybody else around me is lying. He has the ability to heal up the hurts from the past. So, for instance, if you're working with a student and they've been abused, then you can tell them that Christ's life can actually begin to heal up in their mind, their will, and their emotions the abuse they've experienced. Now, I'm going to tell you what this is going to test, the way we're talking about this. This is going to test whether or not you believe Christ's life has the ability to heal up a person's mind. If instead you believe that by day after day and day in and day out, and Don was just talking about this the other day, if just talking about this, or by remembering all this, and going through intense psychotherapy, if you think that all by it, that event, those things happening, heals up a person's memories, you're crazy. Let me tell you the truth, and I'll usually tell students about this when I'm trying to describe to them what Christ has the ability to do on the inside. At our church in Bloomington, Indiana, we had 13 women who had gone through some type of physical and sexual abuse that we knew about. They ranged from age 13 to 64. All of them had been through intensive psychotherapy. And the older ones for years upon years upon years. And although they would tell you that there was some benefit they gained from understanding, the oldest of those ladies said, I always thought time would heal. But yet at 64, she's in asking for help. Now, I'm not mad at the lady, and I'm not beating the lady up. That's not our point. Our point is there's only so much understanding can heal. That's why, and Don put it in a very, very succinct way, that's why we seek the Lord for understanding, and we go to find understanding, but then seek the Lord for His healing. And what you want to do, that sounds like just a trite thing we say to people. For the students, you got to make it real. So here's what I'm telling you, and we're going to end with this. I double dog dare you to tell them that Christ's life has the ability to heal the hurt that a dad that is currently inflicting pain in them can do. Because, now let's just fast forward a little bit. Let's imagine that we're working with a student that lives in a household where the dad is verbally abusive. Okay, let's imagine that we got a student, and this is not a part of this diagram, but I just want to fast forward so you know why this is important as we describe to them what Christ's life is going to do. Let's imagine that we're working with a student whose dad is verbally telling him he's stupid, he's an idiot, he's never going to make it in life, that kind of thing like that. Do you know that later on we're going to tell them, what it is to deny self and take up the cross with a dad like that? Much like the situation that Don was talking about the other night when we were doing the session about you remember the fellow that he was working with, that it's not going to, his deal with his marriage is not going to end anytime soon in terms of his wife's struggles, right? That guy gets to live in the reality of what Christ does for him. He's got to discover how to deny self and take up the cross in that situation. That's what we were talking about. Well, for a student, if he has a verbally abusive father that doesn't give affirmation, and even if it's abusiveness from just withdrawal or abusiveness with words, I'm asking you, be careful now, does Christ have the ability, one, to be healing up that kid as the hurts are coming? And I'm not saying there aren't some things to do with that, but two, doesn't that kid need to learn how Christ is going to walk with him along the way? Yeah. And so that's why it's so crucial that we get to the point when this door flows open, Christ's life has the ability to go in and not only heal, but begin to give them some direction about how they navigate all that. I'm not saying we can't offer some help. I'm just saying we got to make it very aware that it's this black and white. Either Christ's life helps or He does not. Okay, we're going to quit and come back to this.